Dear learners, I am Christina Georgy, your academic counselor for the MEG program. Today we will deal with the course code MEG-01 titled British Poetry. So as per the request of many of our learners, this session will be recorded by me. I'll share the link for your effective preparation for the upcoming TEE. What do you mean by TEE? Your term end examination. So hence I would like to tell you that I'll guide you by explaining the key concepts, the main points to remember. We'll also discuss the major points, or rather the most important questions, and also some of the previous questions from this particular topic of discussion. So as you know, we already dealt with the course introduction session on MEG-01. I hope most of you were present on that day. If in case you were not able to attend the session, you may please move on to the playlist titled MEG-01 on the channel. There you can see the video. So today we'll deal with the very first block of MEG-01. So this very first block is titled Orientation for the Study of Poetry and the Medieval Poet Chaucer. You must have seen in your textbook, you have 4 books for this MEG-01 course code. I hope you are aware of it. If in case you haven't received your textbooks, you can make use of the online content available on eGyan-Kosh. I've already helped you out with the basic information in my previous session. I hope you all are aware of it. Alright? Yes. So in this particular block, there are 7 units. So in block 1, the first 2 units are meant for your general understanding. That is, unit 1 deals with the examination of 2 portraits and their interpretations. So basically it serves as an introduction to the course. Hence you can read and understand that unit on their own. So if you ask me, will there be questions from that unit? So far we haven't seen any questions from that unit, because that's for your general understanding. From the TEE point of view, that is from the term and examination point of view, they don't normally ask questions from this unit. But make sure that you read and have a general understanding on that unit. Will you do so? You may respond using the chat box. Yes. Good. Thank you. So let's now focus our attention towards Unit 2. Okay. If you have your textbook with you, you can turn on to Unit 2 of Block 1. Alright. So there, yes, you can see a section titled A Prelude to the Study of Poetry. So let me ask you, you must have heard this term prelude, right? There is also a poem titled Prelude. Do you know who wrote that? Have you studied that, Anupama? The Prelude is a poem by William Wordsworth. Such things come in between. I might give you some trivia like this. Keep note of these things, because this could help you prepare for NTA NET, SET or any other competitive examinations that you wish to appear for. Alright, so make sure that whenever you attend my sessions, it would be better if you could have a pen and paper, preferably a notebook, where you can make notes of all these additional information that I provide as and when required. I personally believe that that would be very helpful and beneficial to my learners. Okay, so yes, we were speaking about this very term prelude. The Prelude is a poem by William Wordsworth. A prelude, this very particular term, means an introductory piece of work of art. In Malayalam we say Amukham. Whenever we have a big piece of literature, the very first chapter very often will be kind of an introduction, and very often this term prelude can be used for such an introductory piece of work. Do you understand? Is that clear? Yes, thank you. So before we look into this unit as such, let me help you brush up your ideas regarding poetry. Most of you must have done BA in English literature. Am I right? Yes, good. So if in case there is anyone from a non-literary background, you must put some extra effort towards understanding this genre. Nevertheless, we all know that poetry is one of the three main literary genres. So let me ask you, which are the other two literary genres, the most popular ones? I'm very sure that you people will answer this. Very correct. Drama, Athra is correct. Yes, exactly, Fatima. Prose. So generally we say prose, poetry and drama. So have you noticed these are exactly your course titles for MEG course, first year course. MEG-01 British Poetry, MEG-02 and MEG-03 deals with prose and drama. So basically you have all the three basic genres as your major topic for study as part of your first year MA program. Isn't that interesting? And the fourth paper you have is the language paper. It's also very easy to learn and interesting paper. So let me ask you, how do you distinguish between poetry and a poem? Are they the one and the same? Poetry, poem. I would say poetry is a literary form, whereas a poem is a written piece of work. So a poem is a collection of spoken or written words that expresses ideas or emotions in a powerfully vivid and imaginative style. It is extremely difficult to provide an exact definition for poetry. One can loosely define poetry as the opposite of prose. What is not prose can be poetry. But is that the very correct definition? Obviously not. There are certain distinguishing characteristic features that makes poetry different from prose. Do you have any idea regarding these special features? So which are the features that add to the musical quality of the poems? So likewise, as you said, meter, rhyme, rhythm, etc. So we said there are very many definitions for poetry. Do you know any definition that you studied? Do you remember anything? See, very many critics and poets have different opinions regarding the quality of poems. They have defined poems in very many multifaceted ways. For example, Thomas Carlyle, he defines poetry as a musical thought, whereas Dr. Johnson opines that poetry is a metrical composition. We all know Shelley, right? So according to Shelley, poetry is the expression of imagination. With the romantics, imagination always have a upper hand. Yes. So Coleridge, another major romantic, Coleridge defined poetry as the antithesis of science, having for its immediate object pleasure, not truth. Alright, so some of you must have been listening to this for the very first time, but there is one definition that almost everyone knows. All of you must be aware of what Wordsworth said about poetry. What did he say? Exactly. So Wordsworth defines poetry as, I quote, the spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions recollected in tranquility, unquote. See, this is one definition that literature students should be able to say even if someone comes and, awakens you from your bed. Okay, this is one definition that you should always have in mind. Alright? Yes. So, do you think poetry can be classified into subcategories or subgenres? Have you heard of any? Poetry can broadly be classified into subjective and objective poetry depending on the kind of subject matter it treats. So what do you mean by objective poetry? Like the very word means, objective poetry deals with external objects such as actions, events and things. So one particular characteristic of an objective poem is that in such poems, the poet serves as a detached observer. It's just the opposite of a subjective poetry. So, what happens in subjective poetry? Subjective poems are actually the expression of the poet's own experiences, thoughts, feelings, etc. So now let me ask you, do you remember the different types of poetry? The different types of poetry. Yes, can you please give me some examples? If people are answering it right. Lycidas would be an example of an elegy. Yes, I'll just let you know so that everybody can understand. So the different types of poetry include ballad, lyric, epic, mock epic, elegy, sonnet, ode, dramatic monologue, haiku, etc. So those are the basic types or sub-genres of poetry, we can say that way. So what about meter? Do you remember what meter means? You can read about all these things in Unit 2. So if you take page number 30, there you see this unit 2.3.1, prosody, meter, scansion. So prosody, it's basically that part of grammar which deals with laws governing the structure of verse. Okay, this is what you mean by prosody. I hope most of you are aware of it. If in case you are not aware of it, I'll explain in simple terms. Prosody means that patterns of rhythm and sound used in poetry. And these patterns of stress and intonation in a language can also refer to prosody. Meter and metrics, that's something you already know. Meter measures the rhythm of a line of verse, and if interested you can understand that it is a word derived from the Greek word metron, which means measure. Okay, and a piece of trivia, metrics is the study of meter, and non-metric text is called prose. If some piece of writing lacks meter, it can be considered as a piece of prose. Now scansion is another topic mentioned in your textbook. In general parlance, to scan is to look intently at all parts successfully. In prosody, scansion refers to metrical scanning of words. See, if you look at page number 30 of block 1 of your first book for MEG-01, you can see that they have given you the symbols, names of symbols, and the purpose for which they use these symbols. Have you seen that on page number 30? Yes. So you now know how to denote all these. The symbols used, the acute accent, it's used for metrically stressed syllable. The breve, okay, it's like a U-shaped thing, it's used for the metrically weak syllable. One single line, okay, that is for the division between feet. Double line, it denotes a pause, okay, we also call this ishara. And finally a rest, okay, the purpose is for a syllable metrically expected but not actually present. So that takes you to the types of meters. Don't worry, they won't ask you questions based on these things, okay, this is for your general understanding. All of you must have studied all these as part of your BA English course as well. Don't you remember? Yes, if not, you may go back to your textbook and refer to those ideas. Alright? Yes. So there are basically 4 types of meters. Syllable stress or accented syllable meters, strong stress meters, syllabic meters, and quantitative meters. So if you look at syllabic stress meter, you can see those iambic, trochee, ampus, dactyl, and all such differentiations. So what do you mean by a foot? The smallest unit of meter, that is a foot. A foot in prosody is a pattern of phonetically stressed and unstressed syllable. You study all these in detail in aspects of language, MEG-04. About meter, we have iambic pentameter, heroic couplet, blank verse, free verse, etc. Okay, mostly these days people make use of free verse. That is much more common into use. So what do you mean by a refrain? Refrain is basically repeated lines at the end of each stanza. In very many poems we see that 2 lines keep on repeating. So such a thing is called a refrain. The simplest form of a stanza is called the couplet. That is only 2 rhyming lines, couplet. So if there are 4, it is tetrameter. The most common form is tetrameter. Most of these poems have 4 lines each, if you have noticed. Okay, and quatrains are stanzas of 4 lines. 45, they have mentioned rhyme royal, ottava rima, Spenserian stanza, sonnet, etc. So you must have a understanding regarding the rhyme scheme. They won't ask you questions, not to worry, but still for your general understanding, rhyme royal, that rhyme scheme would be AB, AB, B, C, C. Ottava rima, AB, 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 C, C. Spenserian stanza, AB, AB, B, C, B, C, C. And about sonnets, as you know, there are major 3 kinds of sonnets. Which are they? Everybody knows. Shakespearean sonnet, Spenserian sonnet, and Petrarchan. Yeah, correct. So there are also some things that you need to take care of. In Petrarchan sonnet, it is divided into parts of 8 and 6, and there is a specific name for this 8 lines, that is octave, and the rest of the 6 lines are called the sestet. Okay, so towards the end of this unit, they have given you a sample poem. So there, once you read that, you will understand how to explain all these by writing your answers. Alright. Yeah, with respect to the Petrarchan sonnet, the rhyme scheme would be ABBA, ABBA, CDC, CDC, or CDE, CDE. I am very sure that you must be having an understanding regarding how to find the rhyme scheme of a poem. That is the last words of each line. Okay, see how it rhymes, and it is based on that we give this ABC, this rhyme scheme. Okay, if in case you are not clear about it, let me know, I'll make a video on it. Alright, now the Shakespearean sonnet, the rhyme scheme is AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG. This was the easiest sonnet when I used to study. Yeah, this is the easiest rhyme scheme. And we also have the Spenserian sonnet, AB, AB, BC, BC, CD, CD, EE. All these are given in your textbook. Okay, it might take a few minutes for you to read and understand, but don't you worry, this is just for your general understanding. All these would help you write your answers for MEG-01 successfully. Alright, now let's move on to the stanzaic forms. So can you give me a few examples? We already discussed couplet, tercet, quatrain, terza rima, ottava rima, Spenserian stanza, rhyme royal, etc. Okay, keep that in mind. Now moving on to rhyme and rhyme scheme. That is also mentioned in your textbook. Mentioned rhyme is what distinguishes verse from prose, and apart from this meter, there are alliteration, assonance, consonants, onomatopoeia, etc. I suppose you all know what these means. Okay, even in MEG-04, the very first block itself, we study all these. Keep that in mind, brush up your ideas on all these aspects. Now, yeah, here comes an interesting question. What do you mean by literary devices or poetic devices? Poetic devices are simply a form of literary device used in poetry. These are the tools used by poets to express their ideas. Okay, now you can give the examples. That was a right answer. Simile. Apart from that, metaphor, correct. Yes. Assonance, correct. Allegory, good. Personification, yes. And I suppose you know the difference between all these as well. It's important to know. Anything else? Alliteration, metonymy, yes. What about symbol, image, etc.? Hyperbole, good one, the hyperbole. Yes, so you know all these. If at all there is anybody who's not aware of this, please refer to your textbook. And oxymoron, good one. Yes, pleasurable pain. It's an example of oxymoron. Yes. We have so many knowledgeable people here. Happy to see. So shall we move on to the next one? So, we have so far discussed Unit 2 of Block 1, where we dealt with the orientation for the study of MA English course in general. If you look at your coursework, Section 2.6 provides you an analysis of a poem on first looking into Chapman's Homer. It's a poem written by Keats. As you know, Keats is a romantic poet. Yes. So, if you look at 2.6, the section as such, this is meant for your general understanding. They won't ask you a question from the session. What you should do is, you should take some time to read and understand the way in which this section is written. You can see that first and foremost, they have provided details about the poet. Later, they have provided the background of the poet. Thereafter, they identify that this particular poem is a sonnet, probably a Petrarchan sonnet, and thereafter they provide critical appreciation on this particular piece of work. So let me remind you that you have reached the MA level. You are no more a student of BA Literature. So when you write your MEG-01 answers, what you're expected to do is to provide critical appreciation of the work of art that you are studying. If you are answering about a particular poem, you're expected to write the critical aspects, the critical appreciation of this particular work, rather than just writing the summary of the poem. That was the BA level thing that you used to do. But nowadays, when you are doing MA English, you are expected to provide critical explanations as well. So, I have already provided you videos on how to write a critical appreciation of a poem. I suppose you have already checked that out. If in case you have not watched these videos, please do check out the playlist on British poetry. There you have all these videos. I'll also add these videos to our MEG-05 playlist shortly. So make sure that you refer to that. That will make your task easier. Very often students ask me, Madam, how shall I write an answer? How shall we write a critical appreciation? So that is why I prepared these videos, so that my students can benefit out of it. So that's all for this particular unit. As I mentioned, there won't be questions from the TEE from this particular section. This unit we studied in order to help you write the answers. All the essay questions, the 20-mark questions, you might have to mention all these rhyme scheme, features, etc. there. So it's for that purpose that I took effort to let you know this unit in detail. So that's all for this session. We'll continue with Unit 3, that is the life of Chaucer and the poetry of Chaucer, in our next session.